Life is full of encounters, some that fill our hearts and others that fracture them. Along the winding path of human experience, we meet souls who shape us in powerful ways. Some arrive like gifts, showing us what love, loyalty, and genuine connection truly feel like. They offer comfort, joy, and shared growth. They remind us that relationships can be soft places to land. But then, there are others, those whose presence teaches us the painful lessons. They show up like storms, revealing what betrayal tastes like, what emotional exhaustion feels like, and what it's like to pour your heart into someone who only sips from it. And yet, often, we hold on to these people the tightest. We grip relationships that bleed us dry. We stay with those who don't value us, hoping that if we just love them enough, they'll change. That if we prove ourselves worthy, they'll finally choose us in the way we've already chosen them. But why is that? Why is it so difficult to walk away from someone who doesn't reciprocate our love? Carl Jung, the brilliant Swiss psychoanalyst, offered a timeless answer. He believed that our relationships aren't random. They're reflections, mirrors that show us who we are and what still needs healing inside of us. According to Jung, the human unconscious doesn't just sit silently in the background. It actively shapes our reality, guiding us toward people and situations that reflect unresolved wounds or buried beliefs. So when you find yourself constantly drawn to the same type of relationship, the kind where you give more than you receive, or where love feels like a battle, it's not a fluke. It's your unconscious mind at work, recreating a familiar script. These patterns are symbolic. They're not just about the person you're dating or chasing or crying over. They're about what that person awakens within you. Letting go, then, becomes so much more than just ending a relationship. It becomes a spiritual turning point, a psychological awakening, a moment of reclaiming your power. Think back to a time when something inside you knew it was time to walk away, but you stayed anyway. Maybe you convinced yourself that they just needed time, that their love was quiet or complicated or hidden behind trauma. Maybe you kept waiting for them to change, clinging to moments of tenderness as proof that it could all be different someday. But the truth, the problem was never only with them. The deeper issue was what their presence stirred within you. Jung said that our most complicated relationships are mirrors of our shadow, the parts of ourselves we try to ignore. And when we avoid the shadow, it doesn't disappear. It shows up in our lives, disguised as attraction. It finds us in the people we love. It speaks through the pain we endure. If you carry a deep belief that you're not enough, that love must be earned through sacrifice, that being chosen requires suffering, then you will, consciously or not, magnetize people who affirm that story. Until you examine the unconscious narrative, it continues to run the show. As Jung so famously said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. This is why letting go is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's not giving up, it's leveling up. When you finally stop begging someone to see your worth, you start seeing it yourself. And that's where transformation begins. At first, it feels like loss. Your heart aches, your mind resists. The ego clings to the illusion, the fantasy, the hope. Our minds crave closure, clarity, certainty, and letting go offers none of these at first. It offers only a quiet, terrifying space where the familiar has crumbled and the new hasn't yet arrived. But make no mistake, this is sacred ground. This is the in-between where you begin to rebuild. To let go of someone who doesn't value you is to finally tell your own soul, I am listening. I hear you. I see me. And in that moment, the shift begins. You stop chasing validation. You stop shrinking yourself. You stop twisting into versions of who you think they want, hoping it'll finally be enough. And you start reclaiming your wholeness. Letting go isn't about hating the other person. It's not about bitterness or revenge. It's about freedom. It's about choosing to no longer fit into a narrative that doesn't honor your worth. It's about creating space for new, life-giving experiences to arrive, relationships where you are met, seen, chosen without condition. The irony? The moment you start honoring your worth is the moment everything around you begins to change. That's synchronicity, a core idea in Jung's teachings. When your inner world shifts, the outer world follows. New people show up. New paths open. What once felt impossible begins to feel inevitable. Every heartbreak, every one-sided connection, every lonely night was never meaningless. It all carried a message. Heal this. Look here. Wake up. But we often ignore the call. We tell ourselves stories that keep us stuck. We say things like, love is hard, or relationships take work, or maybe I'm just too sensitive. We justify pain because it's familiar. We confuse intensity with love. We keep going back, hoping the ending will change, forgetting we're stuck in the same chapter. But real love, true love, doesn't ask you to suffer endlessly. It doesn't make you prove yourself. It doesn't keep you guessing. If someone doesn't see you, value you, or treat you with respect, that is your answer. Not a challenge. Not a puzzle. Not a test of your patience. And walking away isn't failing, it's waking up. When you stop trying to make someone stay, you start learning how to stay with yourself. That's the real journey. Jung called it individuation, the process of becoming your truest self. It means no longer defining yourself by how others treat you. It means no longer outsourcing your self-worth to someone else's recognition. You realize the love you've been aching for was never out there to begin with. It's been waiting within you all along. But you cannot step into that wholeness while holding on to something that fragments you. You can't rise while clinging to the very thing weighing you down. And yet we do. We hope they'll change. We hope they'll notice. We hope if we just love them better, they'll love us back. But ask yourself, why are you working so hard to be seen by someone who keeps looking away? Jung believed these patterns begin in childhood. Maybe you were taught that love comes through sacrifice. Maybe you learned early on that attention must be earned. That being loved means being useful, agreeable, quiet, small. So when you meet someone who withholds affection, it feels familiar. It feels like home, even if that home was cold. But here's what you need to know. You are allowed to create a new home. One built on truth. One where love is easeful, reciprocal, safe. One where you are not performing or proving, but simply being. Letting go is the beginning of that homecoming. It's not abandonment. It's not giving up hope. It's planting a new seed, one rooted in self-trust. And as it grows, so does your ability to choose relationships that align with your truth. The hardest part is often the silence, the in-between, the space where the person is gone, but the pain still lingers. That's where your healing lives. Because the truth is, the most transformative relationships are not the ones that stay. They're the ones that wake you up. The ones that crack your heart wide open and force you to look at the parts of yourself you've avoided. And when you look, really look, you begin to heal. You begin to see that your love is a gift. Your presence is a privilege. Your energy is sacred. And not everyone deserves access to it. So let go. Not because they don't matter, but because you do. Let go, not in anger, but in love. Love for yourself. Love for the lesson. Love for the new story you are now ready to write. The universe responds to clarity. When you decide you are no longer available for crumbs, the table begins to change. When you stop showing up where you are not valued, your energy shifts. And what once felt like loss becomes liberation. Letting go may feel like the end, but it's actually the beginning of your return to self. And in that return, everything becomes possible again. Letting go isn't just about releasing someone or something. It's a quiet revolution, a moment when you turn inward and realize that the love you've been searching for was never meant to come from outside. It's the most powerful declaration of self-worth. The choice to stop waiting for someone else to choose you and finally choose yourself. That choice, simple in words but profound in its ripple, is when everything begins to shift. You no longer look outward for validation, no longer live in a state of waiting, wondering, wishing. You come home to yourself. True connection doesn't come from force, from begging, from chasing. It arrives like breath, soft, natural, mutual. Two souls who simply choose to show up for each other without needing to prove or plead. But before you find that kind of love, you must first give it to yourself. And that begins with letting go of anything or anyone that makes you feel like you're not enough as you are. When you make that decision, something sacred happens. You stop living in reaction to what someone else does or doesn't do. You stop twisting yourself into shapes for someone who can't even see your worth. Instead, you begin to reclaim all the energy you've been giving away, your attention, your thoughts, your hopes, your sleepless nights. That energy? It was never wasted, it was misdirected. And when it returns to you, so does your power. Suddenly, you see with new eyes. You realize how long you've been betraying yourself to keep a connection alive. You notice the subtle ways you shrank, silenced, or sacrificed just to feel loved. But now you know, real love never asks you to disappear. And in this clarity, you start to open, not to old patterns, but to new possibilities. The world begins to whisper back in synchronicities, in sudden alignments, in unexpected opportunities. What once felt heavy now begins to feel like momentum. Life was never against you. It was just waiting for you to let go of what was holding you back. But nothing new can enter if you're still stuck in a place where you're not seen, not valued. The most courageous thing you'll ever do is say, "This is no longer enough." Not with bitterness, not with resentment, but with a quiet, grounded knowing that your peace matters more. That you no longer have to perform for love. That you no longer have to accept crumbs when you were made for the feast. Letting go is often misunderstood. People think it means losing, giving up, surrendering to emptiness. But letting go is not the end. It's the beginning. It's the opening of your arms and heart to something greater. It's gaining freedom, gaining space, gaining clarity, and most of all, gaining yourself back. Yes, it hurts. Of course it does. You're saying goodbye to a piece of your life, to a bond you once believed in, to a dream you tried to keep alive. You're grieving not just what was, but what could have been. But that pain is not your forever. It is only the passage. What waits on the other side is peace. Peace that comes from no longer carrying what was never yours to hold. In that peace, you meet yourself again. You stand in front of the mirror and no longer seek someone else's eyes to tell you you're worthy. You see it, you feel it, you know it. Wholeness blooms not from another's love, but from the love you finally give yourself. And from that place, you make better choices. You stop settling. You stop tolerating the things you once made excuses for. You no longer let the fear of being alone convince you to stay somewhere that doesn't honor your soul. Letting go, then, is not about releasing a person. It's about releasing an outdated version of yourself, the version that thought love had to be earned through sacrifice, that believed suffering was a price for connection. You let go of fear, of lack, of codependence. You stop chasing. And in that release, you are reborn. Carl Jung said that there's no awakening of consciousness without pain. And yet, it's painful to let go. But pain is not the enemy. Pain is the doorway. Through it, you become. You transform. You rise into a self who no longer needs to cling. You learn to walk with trust, not with fear. You understand that endings are not failures, they are initiations. And when someone walks out of your life, when a relationship falls apart, it is not always a punishment. Sometimes it is protection, a redirection, a divine realignment. Instead of asking, why did they leave? You begin to ask, what is this experience trying to teach me? Maybe it's showing you where your boundaries were too soft. Maybe it's revealing a place inside you that still seeks approval. Maybe it's inviting you to finally heal what's been hurting for years. The truth is, when you keep clinging, you keep suffering. You prolong the ache. You build castles on illusions. You convince yourself that if you just love harder, try harder, wait longer, things will change. But love is not supposed to be a war with only one soldier. If someone cannot meet you, respect you, or grow with you, they are not your person. And that doesn't make them bad. It just makes them not your match. And that's okay. The pain doesn't come from the letting go. The pain comes from the resistance, from the holding on, from the belief that you can't be whole without them. But you can. You are, and you always were. What you really feared wasn't the loss of them. It was the loss of the identity you built around being with them. But that identity was never your truth. Your truth is deeper. Your truth is peace. And that peace only arrives when you stop settling for anything that makes you question your worth. When you realize that loneliness is not the absence of another, it's the absence of connection with yourself. There are people who are never alone, yet deeply lonely. And there are those who sit in solitude and feel completely full. The difference isn't in the crowd, it's in the connection. When you let go, you tell your soul, I trust you. You send a signal to your subconscious that you are done abandoning yourself. You step into alignment. And in that alignment, life rises to meet you. Not with chaos, but with calm. Not with more pain, but with more purpose. You attract differently. You love differently. You live differently. Because you are different. You're no longer choosing from a place of lack. You're choosing from abundance, from fullness, from truth. Love, real love, will never ask you to betray yourself. It will never require you to be smaller, quieter, less radiant. Real love celebrates your wholeness. And the moment you realize that, you'll stop accepting anything less. So if you're still holding on, let this be your sign. Not because you need to rush, but because you deserve to breathe again. You deserve to feel light again. You deserve to stop trying to convince someone of your worth and start embracing it for yourself. You deserve joy. You deserve ease. You deserve real, deep, soul-nourishing love. And that love, it begins with you. You may not see it yet, but the moment you let go, truly let go, the world will start to shift. Slowly, softly. You'll see it in the way you walk, in the way you speak, in the people you attract. What once felt like heartbreak will start to feel like breakthrough. What once broke you will now be what builds you. You are not broken. You're awakening. You don't need to wait for someone else to choose you. You were born chosen. And the love that is meant for you, it will never ask you to prove that. So breathe, let go, and trust that what's ahead is far more beautiful than anything you're leaving behind.